Hey, what's up, guys? Charles Diva here again with MaxVALoan.com. I've got a special guest in the studio, not for the first time, Maurice Watkins.
What's up, everybody?
Marine Corps veteran, realtor, leaders of the Warriors team, and your business is growing leaps and bounds, I see.
It is.
And Maurice is very heavily invested in the business of helping service members get into homes, not just active duty service members, but veterans. But today we're going to talk about service members and 3 ways that they can get out of their lease to buy a home. What a great topic, huh?
Yeah. Beautiful topic.
How many times have you had a Marine or Navy or whoever ask you, hey, man, I want to buy a house, but I'm stuck on this lease?
I get that at least once or twice a month. Yeah.
What do you
Very
tell
often.
them? What do you
I just tell them, I tell them, hey, first of all, you in base housing or are you living out in town or, what's your living situation? Once I find that out, if they're in a lease, the first thing I let them know is, yes, you can break that lease. Right?
Okay. So with that as a backdrop, I'm reading my notes here. Service Member Civil Relief Act.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. What does that enable a service member to do?
So a Service Member Civil Relief Act, that basically enables you, especially if you have what they call PCS order, permanent change of station. If you have orders or you have something that happened to your family or you have to leave all of a sudden, it lets the landlords know that they have to break that lease immediately. Right?
So they can get out of the lease.
Yes, and not charge the service member anything.
Am I right in saying, I thought I read where if there's a deployment more than 90 days, that applies as well?
Yep, that applies as well.
Okay.
Or if you're getting out of service.
Or if you're getting out. So if you're getting discharged too.
Correct.
Now, that's interesting because is that considered similar to a PCS?
That's the same as getting orders because now you have orders to go back home.
Wow.
Right.
Similar to when you first get in and you go to boot camp.
Right.
So what you're telling me, if you guys are watching this, what you're telling me is if you're in the military and you are stuck in a lease, this provision allows you to literally go to your landlord and say, I have to get out of this lease, and they can't stop you. Is that fair to say?
That is fair.
Okay.
Yep.
Have you been a part of that? Have you seen
I have. I've used that Soldier Sailor Act plenty of times. I used it when I was on recruiting duty. I used it here in California. I even used it in Japan because I lived out in town in Japan and it worked in Japan as well.
Right.
So yeah, I have used it and I've been a component of having other people use it as well.
Right. It's an interesting kind of side thought, right? I know there's occasions where there's a married couple, right? One member is a service member, the spouse is not. Service member is going to deploy. Spouse is going to stay. This sounds like there's an opportunity for them to purchase a home as he or she leaves, and the spouse occupies the home.
Correct.
You break the lease. Is that a thing?
Yeah, that's a premium opportunity to do that. Yeah, definitely. There's a few other ways you can get to it, but we'll talk about that shortly.
So the second thing I had written down is have a tenant take over the lease, right?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so you can have another service member or you can have a civilian take over your lease and finish up where you started and take over that lease. You can get roommates in there. They can take over it. There's several different ways you can get out of it. So.
I'm not a legal expert. I'm in California rent law, whatnot, but as I understand it, California law is pretty in favor of the tenant.
Yep, tenant-friendly state.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And so is it true to say that if you as a service member get out of that lease, what you're on the hook for is what's left over, the residual?
Right. So pretty much if you're not using, so you're saying if you're not using the Civil Service Act?
Correct.
Okay. So yeah, if you're not using that Civil Service Act, you have to read your lease, right? And then the lease is going to tell you whether it's a 30-day or 60-day notice. And you abide by that notice. You put that notice in. I always tell people if you're buying a house, don't put that notice in until you've secured a house, right?
Sure.
At least 30 days from securing that house.
Sure.
Put that notice in, and you're only responsible for the amount of time that it's empty after you move out. And even me as a landlord here in the state of California, there's no way I'm going to leave my unit empty for the next year. 4 months.
I was just going to say, there's such a need for rental housing, right?
Right. Yeah.
Is it fair to say it's unlikely that a service member is going to be like, well, shoot, I need to get out of this lease. I want to go buy this house, but I can't fill my spot.
Yeah. Very unlikely in at least in areas that we're in the state of California. I mean, if you got a bunch of gangbangers outside, it might take you a while. But if you live in a regular neighborhood like most of us do, then you'll have people lined up getting that property.
So what we're talking about here is 3 ways that a service member can get out of his or her lease to purchase a home. We talked about the Service Member Civil Relief Act, which basically empowers their service member to go to the landlord and say, hey, I got to cut loose of this lease because I've got to move with the military. I've got a PCS to another duty station and or deploy, and the lease can be broken.
Correct.
And then we talked about option 2, which is finding a tenant to take over the lease,
right,
and monetarily kind of fill that gap.
Right.
The third one that I'd like to talk about, and this is not very well known amongst the community, is the VA loan allows the seller to pay to break the penalty of to pay for the penalty for breaking the lease.
Correct.
That's an amazing thing.
That is a beautiful thing.
And I've done transactions where neither the realtor or the veteran knew that that was a thing, but they were willing to pay the $2,500 or $3,000 or whatever it took. Have you seen that happen?
I have not seen it happen yet. I mean, I've heard about it, but I have not seen it happen. But I think it's a beautiful thing, and I'm looking forward to my first transaction and getting that done.
Awesome, because they're labeled concessions, right? So the VA allows for 4% in seller concessions, and so if you're buying a $500,000 house, 4% is $20,000, right?
Right.
And in that, in that is the ability to pay for the breakage of the lease, which is going to cause some kind of a penalty.
Correct.
Would it be fair to say that's worth it these days? Is it worth it doing that?
I would say it's worth it, and it looks like those days are going to come back here soon. I'm looking at some of these listings on the market, so a lot of these sellers are now willing to negotiate, and I'd imagine that's one of the things they'll negotiate.
I was just going to say, here we are, we're talking about the seller paying for something,
right,
which is not being heard. I mean, no one's heard about that in several months. Over a year and a half, it's been such a seller's market. We're recording this in the summer of 2022. Do you think that's a conversation that's going to be had again?
Oh, I think
sellers?
It's definitely. I think it's going to be had very soon. I mean, I got a couple of listings myself, and we went from a market of 1 day getting 20 offers to 3 weeks getting no offers.
Wow.
Right. So a lot of those sellers are definitely willing to negotiate and pay that 4%.
Let me ask you this: someone that's living in base housing, or maybe they live in the barracks, a single person. I don't know all the rules that apply to active duty personnel. But I keep hearing that there's loopholes and there's ways to ask for permission to live off base. Is that what can you come? I mean, you pretty senior in the Marine Corps. What do you know about that? What can you?
You're saying
us?
If a person's living in a barracks?
Exactly.
Got it. Yeah. So if a person's living in a barracks, one of the number one things they'll say is, "Are the barracks full?" Right. If the barracks is at a certain % occupancy, and when I was in, it had to be at 90% occupancy. Once it's at 90% occupancy, people that were E4s and above, they were able to move out of the barracks and receive the basic allowance for housing.
Gotcha.
Right. So that's one way out. Another way out is, of course, getting married. And another way out is to have a dependent that you're taking care of, maybe a sister's kid or something like that, or a mother or a sick friend or something like that, inheriting them as a dependent. And that way you can get out of the barracks as well.
That's interesting. I feel like, just playing devil's advocate, I feel like that last clause could be exploited.
Yeah.
How do I'm an active duty service member. How do I prove to you in my command that I just took on this burden, or this, not burden, but this responsibility of this child or this adult or whatever? How does that get communicated?
Yeah. So typically if you get a dependent, you have to do some court paperwork, and you'll have to have that court paperwork presented to your command, and then your command approves it. Some commands will just trust your word. If you're an honest person, got good character and whatnot or whatever, they'll trust your word and say, hey, this is what's happening to this Marine or sailor or whatever, and they'll let you out.
Wow.
But for the most part, they're going to ask you for some court documentation stating that you actually had that dependent.
Real quick in closing, Maurice, let's talk about rent versus own. Prices are high.
Right.
I mean, let's cut to the chase, right? It is becoming increasingly difficult for some ranks to cover that mortgage payment with their BAH.
Right.
What are you telling those guys and girls?
I would tell them, to be honest with you, now look at manufactured homes. That's something that people haven't looked at previously.
Okay.
Look at manufactured homes. The ones without the leasehold. Look at some of those, because they're still in the high 300s, low 400s. I would say start looking at those, because very often the time as agents, a lot of us, we just look at single family homes, condos, townhomes. Look at those manufactured homes as well, because those E4s and E5s and even those people below that rank, they can still get in some of those.
What about commute? I mean, are you having conversations with these guys and girls about being willing to commute a little bit further to get better prices?
I always have that conversation, but I also understand, being a former Marine myself, and being the leadership and seeing a Marine that's traveling an hour and a half away with gas being $6.50 a gallon or $6 a gallon,
right,
that, hey, this may not be something that you can afford right now.
Sure.
So you might want to drive to commute, do the math, and say, hey, how much did it cost me to do this for 1 day? Okay, now is how much it's going to cost me to do this for 20 days out of the month.
Right.
And then make a decision on whether or not you should buy that house.
Good stuff, Maurice. Thank you for sharing. Guys, if you're watching this, we just got done talking about 3 ways that an active duty service member can get out of their lease. I've known Maurice for many, many years. I know he does a good job, but more importantly, he's a man of his word and a man of integrity. And so you're not going to get the runaround. You're not going to get sold something that you don't want. He's going to tell it to you straight. How do they get a hold of you, Maurice, if they want some help?
Hey, Maurice the Marine Broker on Instagram. My phone number is 760-207-8719. TheWarriorsGroup.com, GRP.com. That's how you get a hold of anyone from our group, all veteran team.
Awesome. Thank you for your service and your support. And I'm Charles Van Mediva. Check me out, maxvaloan.com. That doesn't mean they're going to max it out for you. It just means that we're going to tell you, here's the limit. You can't go above this. And then it's your decision, your prerogative to buy at your comfort level. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next show.
Thanks, Charles.